The American blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is continuing at full force. Donald Trump is increasing the pressure on Iran. Thousands of American troops are on their way to the Middle East. It appears that the United States military is ready with an aircraft carrier, a marine force, and new sanctions. And over the past 24 hours, Washington has intensified the pressure in an attempt to force an agreement on the Revolutionary Guards, while in the background, there are fears of further escalation. On one hand, Iran is warning that it will block the Red Sea if the United States does not lift the naval blockade. And on the other hand, maybe the Revolutionary Guards in Iran are finally climbing down from the very high tree that they climbed up. I would really love to know who's running things over there in the Islamic Republic. Does anybody know? Write to me in the comments. What do you think? Who's running things in Iran? Because according to an initial report, Iran submitted a proposal in the negotiations that would apparently solve the issue surrounding the Strait of Hormuz, but not the nuclear issue. We continue. Iran is rebuilding its launch capabilities, and intelligence reports revealed that Tehran is using the relative claim to recover missile launchers and refortify its strategic facilities. New satellite images reveal that Iran is rebuilding its underground missile cities. Pakistan Foreign Ministry said that, for now, no date has been set for the next round of talks between the United States and Iran. I'm Yair Pinto, with me is Shoshani, and together we are boots on the ground. We bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel, and we're coming to you now from the David's Harp Hotel in the north, right next to the Sea of Galilee. And also, we bring you the full truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East, Iran, and this war. And this is the opening of day 48 of the Roaring Lion War, or by its American name, Epic Fury. So, while a senior Iranian official is threatening, we will sink American ships in the Strait of Hormuz and kidnap thousands in the event of an invasion. At the same time, contacts between the United States and Iran are advancing towards a framework agreement to end this war. The American naval blockade of Iran in the Strait of Hormuz continues, and in the meantime, U.S. destroyers in the area have already stopped Iranian ships and ordered them to turn back. We have stopped Iran's economic trade by sea, wrote the CENTCOM commander. It was reported overnight that the blockade is being carried out by 15 American warships that are stationed outside the Strait of Hormuz. The United States military announced that 6 Iranian vessels were forced to turn back because of this blockade. According to the reports, American military forces already making their way to the region, including around 6,000 troops aboard the aircraft carrier George H.W. Bush and the warships that are escorting it, whose unusual route was first reported by the USNI News. They are expected to be joined near the end of the month by another 4,200 troops from the Amphibious Task Force, Boxer, and its Marine unit. The arrival of these forces will give U.S. Central Command 3 aircraft carriers operating at the same time, joining the roughly 50,000 military personnel already involved in the operations against Iran. Iran is signaling compromise with the United States. The pressure on Tehran is increasing after the American blockade on Iran on the oil exports, while mediation efforts continue. Iran is signaling a willingness to allow free navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, but the move depends on progress in the negotiations with Washington. As the tightening ring around Tehran grows smaller, Iran is pulling out the Hormuz card once more. The pressure on Tehran is increasing after the American blockade on oil exports, while mediation efforts continue. Iran is signaling a willingness to allow free navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, but the move depends on progress in the negotiations with Washington. Intelligence reports reveal an engineering operation in the heart of Iran to recover hundreds of missiles and launchers that are trapped underground and under the cover of diplomatic contacts Tehran is using Chinese rescue equipment and Russian engineers to rebuild the Imam Ali base and other strategic sites. The Iranian regime has allocated massive budgets to fortify its bunkers deeper into the rock while deploying Chinese air defensive systems. Iran is on the verge of explosion, so Tehran is looking for a political arrangement. And look, the Iranian economy is at a historic low point. The regime desperately needs sanctions relief. The purchasing power of the Iranian citizens has been cut by 50%. Inflation is racing above the 40% mark, and the deep crisis is creating heavy internal pressure on the leadership. This is after they massacred tens of thousands of their own people. Sources in the West estimate that the financial distress and fear of the return of Trump's maximum pressure policy are the driving force behind the negotiations in the first place. Kuwait exposed a secret financing network that transferred funds to Iran. And against the backdrop of a regional struggle against financing smuggling and indirect funding mechanisms for organizations that are operating in the Iranian Shiite arena, Kuwait arrested 24 operatives who are acting under the cover of charity, religion, and trade. As for the United States-China relations, the American blockade on Iran is apparently also intended to pressure China, which buys 90% of Iranian oil. This is something that causes the Chinese to use their levers of influence on the Ayatollah regime in these negotiations. Beijing responded sharply. President Xi warned in his first public reference to the war against a slide into the law of the jungle. But when the prices begin to rise in China as well, the pressure that Trump is applying may also work. The American president is indeed risking relations just before his historic visit to China, where he hopes to sign a trade deal, but Donald Trump promises that President Xi will give him a big, fat hug, in his words. And while Iran collapsing and the Gulf states are entering recession, Saudi Arabia and Egypt are managing to keep their heads above water. But it appears that the economy across the Middle East and North Africa is expected to slow down significantly, and we will soon bring you the full economic breakdown of the Middle East. The IDF spokesperson in Persian drops a bombshell on the Revolutionary Guards and proves that Iran is using a military spokesperson who cannot be eliminated. The IDF spokesperson in Persian is raising doubts over whether the spokesperson of the Qatam el-Anabiya, the headquarters of the Iranian security forces and the Revolutionary Guards, is actually an AI-generated fictional figure created by the Revolutionary Guards. The IDF deepens its activities in Lebanon, with more than 200 strikes. The Air Force continues to pursue a Hezbollah terror cell, in addition to the hunt of rocket launchers in southern Lebanon. During the operation, 5 IDF soldiers were wounded by rocket fire, one of them very seriously, while IDF forces continue clearing terrorist zones. And in Lebanon, in just 1 minute, in a well-planned operation, Egoz and Yalom, IDF super units, special forces, destroyed around 70 Hezbollah infrastructures in southern Lebanon. During the night, Hezbollah launched a surface-to-surface missile towards central Israel. The missile fell short of the city of Haifa in an open area. And within a few hours, direct negotiations will begin by phone because President Aoun of Lebanon announced that at the last moment he's unable to meet with the Prime Minister of Israel, a recurring pattern of fear in the Middle East amongst the Arab leaders to kind of bail at the last minute on meetings with Israeli officials. Therefore, the negotiations will be conducted by phone, accompanied by Marco Rubio and by an influential power. We will bring you now the French influence in Lebanon and how it all evaporated, because Israel wants to maintain its hold on a security strip in southern Lebanon, even in the scenario of a ceasefire with Hezbollah. In the current negotiations, both Israel and Lebanon strongly rejected the French attempt to push into the talks that are taking place between them because the former empire can only interfere and damage the chances of progress. The power that once held a key position in the region has made itself irrelevant. We will soon bring you all the details. I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Mati Shoshani, and together we are boots on the ground and we bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel. And this is day 48 of the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And just 1 second before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button, and most importantly, don't forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and for Mati Shoshani on our social media platforms to get our perspective on what it's like to live in Israel in this war. Our senior Middle East affairs correspondent, Mati Shoshani, good to have you here with us. When we see that on the one hand, America is tightening the blockade on Iran in the Strait of Hormuz, and on the other hand, the Iranian messages about willingness to allow free navigation in Hormuz are also expanding, like they say that there are willingness. Is this a success of the United States pressure campaign and toughness in the negotiations?
Yeah, I mean, it is a success on the one hand, and on the other hand, the Iranian regime lie consistently. And this would be another one of those cases. I'd ask you, Yair, if you had to sign off on a ship traveling through the Strait of Hormuz now, carrying explosives on it or carrying oil or natural gas, would you take responsibility for that at this moment?
Nah, listen, I think I'll pass. I'll ship my oil through the land, maybe, or air.
Yeah, so exactly my point. The fact that the Iranians are saying, oh, we're doing nothing to prevent travel through the Strait of Hormuz. It's the evil, aggressive Americans who are causing all the damage. Let's remind everyone that the Iranians told everyone that they put mines throughout the Strait of Hormuz, and oops, we don't know where they are. Oh, you can travel. We're not going to stop you. We're not the ones stopping you. But maybe your ship will explode. We can't control it. I mean, that's the kind of almost ridiculous behavior that we've come to expect from the Iranians. On the one hand, they threaten. On the other hand, they say, if you want to travel through, call our hotline and transfer $2 million to get the ship through. On the third hand, they say we've put mines through the Strait of Hormuz and are allowing them to pass through. They play these games often. It's the blockade was announced against them, and then a few hours later, suddenly they're claiming, well, we never said we wouldn't give up on our enriched uranium. Where literally a day before that, they publicly said, we will never give up on our enriched uranium. It is our national right to have enriched uranium. And you look at that and you say, no, I think there's a disparity in the information you're releasing here. You just said that. That was you. And the next day, they're like, no, we would never do such a thing. That's terrible behavior. So, it sounds funny here, but the Iranian regime lies consistently. They're violent. They're terrorists. We should treat them as violent terrorists, which is exactly what they are. And yes, the pressure by the Americans is working. The Americans have worked smartly and cleverly with the Chinese and with other governments in the Gulf. The pressure on the Iranian regime will carry a significant financial price on the Iranian regime. It will carry a significant amount of pressure, especially on the IRGC elite. And I believe and I hope that we'll continue to see more and more signals coming out of them saying, actually, we're ready for peace. Actually, we're happy negotiating. We actually love America. We love Israel. You never know what they'll say under pressure, Yair. So yes, the negotiation is getting closer and is looking more positive, but also the Iranians can't be trusted, and you can only count on their actions, not on their statements.
Yeah, definitely, Mati. And now I want to shift to the second arena that Israel has. We have kind of, I think, 4 arenas, and hopefully we'll touch base on each one of them today in this report. But I'm going to Lebanon. Can you explain in a very, very, basic terms to our viewers, what is Israel doing there and what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I'll try to keep this simple. So Israel is fighting in Lebanon against the Hezbollah terrorist organization. The Hezbollah terrorist organization has been embedded in Lebanon for over 40 years, 45 years if I remember correctly. And they've been working on one big project, which is destroying the state of Israel. They're not doing that on behalf of the Lebanese people and not on behalf of Muslim people. They're doing that on behalf of the Iranian regime in Iran, who paid for it, who gave them their name, and have trained them over the last decades. That's the background. What's happened now is Israel is campaigning against Hezbollah, which was, and this is a longer story, dragged into this war because they were forced to attack Israel by the Iranians. Israel said, we're simply not okay with allowing Hezbollah to sit on the border and fire anti-tank missiles and rockets and larger scale ballistic missiles, or let's call them larger rockets against Israel. They're not exactly ballistic, they're just large missiles against Israel, threatening our northern communities. We can't continue or end this war and go back to life without removing the threat of the Iranian regime vis-a-vis through Hezbollah. And because of that, Israel is fighting against Hezbollah. This war has been hugely successful for the Israeli forces in Lebanon. We've eliminated more than 1,700 terrorists to date in Hezbollah. We've encircled several of their big holdouts, the big towns, cities that they're holding on to, and we're pushing them back to make them out of range for mortar fire, for short-range drones, for short-range anti-tank missiles, so they can't just fire into Jewish communities. And all the while, there's a negotiation that's taking place with the Lebanese government, trying to reach a point where we can hand over the responsibility to them to disarm Hezbollah and bring peace back to this region. Israel wants nothing more than to have a peaceful resolution to what's happening in our northern borders, but Hezbollah cannot be trusted. Neither can the Lebanese government until we're proven otherwise, and we definitely can't allow the Iranians to keep pumping money and weapons into the region with a purpose publicly stated of destroying the state of Israel.
Yeah, I get it. So basically, Israel needs to be there to destroy this terrorist organization from, first of all, controlling the Lebanese people, and then also threatening the Israeli people, especially in the northern border, but they can also reach the central and southern parts of Israel with the rockets. So
yes,
pretty good mission, I would say. But let me shift to another front that Israel has, and that's the Gaza Strip. Like, it's been on the major news that we reported every single day for 2 years, up until the ceasefire began and the hostages were released, and then everything shifted to Iran and to Hezbollah. But Hamas terrorists are still seen controlling the Gaza Strip. I've seen images of Hamas terrorists on pickup trucks, the same white Toyota pickup trucks that they used in October 7 to launch attacks against Israel, with their AK-47s on the back, carrying their green bandana handband, and basically looks like they're controlling. We have also reports of them enlisting some 10,000 new terrorists into their ranks. What's going on with this front? And is Israel gonna dismantle this organization once and for all?
Sadly, the answer is probably no, Yair. I don't want to say business is back to usual in the Gaza Strip, but business is half back to usual. Half in the sense that Israel still holds on to a substantial area in the Gaza Strip that creates a barrier between the Gaza population and Hamas terrorists and the Jewish communities on the other, or the Israeli communities on the other side of the border. We call that the yellow line. Hamas on a daily basis attacks Israel. Hamas on a daily basis tries to undermine Israeli protective measures in the Gaza Strip by attacking IDF soldiers in that area. And as you stated clearly, yes, they are taking over the Gaza Strip. They are trying to reimpose their vicious control over the Gaza Strip, as they've done in the past, always at the price of their people, never with a goal of actually doing anything good for the people of Gaza. It's a repeated story that is sadly very, very tragic. And there's an important element over here, Yair. This solution for what happens in the Gaza Strip is not an Israel military solution. It never was going to be an Israeli military solution. It always was and will be a solution that involves multiple other countries in the world. I want to remind everyone that just a handful of months ago, there was a summit at Sharm el-Sheikh in the Sinai Peninsula that had leaders from throughout the Arab world, together with President Trump. It was a day that the last Israeli hostages were returned from the Gaza Strip, and they announced openly, they said, or just the day adjacent to that moment, and they said, look, there's going to be an agreement, we're going to bring an international force in, and all those humanitarian efforts are still waiting to take action in the Gaza Strip, but they can only start working when Hamas is removed. That only happens when several other Arab countries, and it has to be Arab countries, it should, by the way, be Muslim countries, who push out the Hamas terrorists. Hamas terrorists will never wake up in the morning and say, you know what, Yair? I think this whole violence and terrorism thing was wrong. Let's go back to be nice people and try to build some schools instead of planting bombs in them. That conversation
Well, I
isn't
think
happening.
most of them were never nice people to begin with, so it's kind of hard to go back. They don't know anything else because many of them were
Yeah.
brainwashed into the Hamas ecosystem of creating terrorists from kindergarten level.
Exactly, and so that's exactly the point where they're not going to change. You know, they're not going to become this pacifistic, movement overnight unless someone forces them out, and that's what needs to happen over there.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'd say this from an Israeli perspective, we're forced to continue fighting on multiple fronts. This is not an easy military situation, definitely not from a manpower or budget perspective. We're holding on to a substantial defensive line in Gaza against the Hamas terrorists, to a substantial defensive line in Lebanon, in Syria, and of course, well, up till recently, fighting a war also in Iran at the same time. So a lot of effort that's going out. Really, the solution to all these things is what Trump is pushing for, which is the diplomatic, which is the non-military. It's the solution that is greater than this. Anyway, that the end of the story is, Yair, is really the solution to all of these things is a diplomatic agreement, international coalition that works on this, led by the United States of America, not the UN, who've proven to be hugely ineffective, if not malicious in many of their actions in this region.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for explaining all of this, Mati Shoshani, and to all of our viewers. This is what we should be praying for. One, for the negotiations with Iran, for the war with Iran to be ending, but in a positive way, that we don't have a threat 2 weeks from now. Two, for the situation in Lebanon, that the IDF will be able to dismantle the Hezbollah terrorist organization with the help of the Lebanese government. And three, that there will be a long-term peaceful solution for the Gaza Strip that does not involve a terrorist organization ruling over the Palestinian people in Gaza. Okay? And to all of you that are just watching us now, that is Mati Shoshani, and I'm Yair Pinto, and together we are boots on the ground. So thank you very much, Mati, for this analysis, and we'll see you again tomorrow in person here in the David's Harp Hotel on the Sea of Galilee. And if you come to Israel, you have to visit this place. This is a boots on the ground certified location that you have to see. You saw the views from the show. You cannot find a more boots on the ground place in Israel than here. Then tell your pastors, tell your tour leaders that you have to include the David's Harp Hotel in the Sea of Galilee when you come to Israel very soon. And we'll love to meet you here for coffee. Right, Mati?
I'll see you there tomorrow, yeah.
Definitely. Okay. So, and to all of you, see you again tomorrow at the David's Harp Hotel with Mati Shoshani. Thank you for this report. But the news continue. And we invite you now to take part in something real, something that is rooted in the land of Israel and in our hearts. I'm talking about the Rebuild Israel campaign. Remember, we did this campaign a while ago, but then the war with Iran started. But now, during the ceasefire, we think it's time to bring life back to Israel's north. Along Israel's northern border, there is an area marked by war, by displacement, and by loss. And we are planting an apple orchard, seriously, not as a symbol, not as a single moment, but as a practical, long-term commitment to rebuild what was damaged and to stand with Israel. And this orchard is more than just agriculture. It creates jobs for local families in Israel. It helps communities return and rebuild. And it sends a clear message to the people of Israel and to everybody else around the world that Israel is here to stay. So when you donate, you're not just giving, you are rebuilding. Your support puts trees in the ground, restores livelihoods, and transforms land that is scarred by war into a land that grows again. This is how renewal takes root. This is how Israel rebuilds after war. Join us in restoring the north and strengthening the future of the land of Israel. You can go now to tbn.org/rebuildisrael. Again, that's tbn.org/rebuildisrael, or call 800-804-7895. That's 800-804-7895. Rebuild the land, restore hope, bless the future, and let me add, plant an apple tree in Israel. Let's continue with the news, because within a single minute in southern Lebanon, a God's Special Forces units, together with Yalam forces, destroyed around 70 Hezbollah terror infrastructure in the Kashbat Anita neighborhood in Bint Jbeil area. And before that, those same forces raided a Hezbollah combat zone, uncovered dozens of weapons, and inside a school in the area, they found more than 130 firearms and other weapons. So, what are we seeing right now? Just another day of tactical attrition against Hezbollah? Or a broader move in which Israel, the United States, and growing international pressure are trying together to impose a new reality on the entire Iranian axis? We're now on day 48 of the Roaring Lion War, or in its American name, Epic Fury. And this day opens exactly where this war feels most alive, on the ground, not in headlines, not in hints, not in declarations, on the ground, in the neighborhoods of Bint Jbeil, inside schools, inside civilian spaces that Hezbollah turned into fighting compounds, and in rapid raids where IDF forces are not only locating terrorist infrastructure, but erasing it at a pace that already feels like a shift from hunting targets to systematically dismantling an enemy zone. Forces from the Commando Brigade under Division 98 are continuing to deepen the ground operation in southern Lebanon, and found RPGs, AK-47s, Kalashnikov rifles, grenades, and anti-aircraft missiles, surveillance gear, and other combat equipment. At the same time, Maglan fighters eliminated terrorists that are operating from that same area and trying to advance attack plans against the Israeli forces. After the searches came the destruction phase, and that number, 70 infrastructures destroyed within 1 minute, is not just a number. It points to the prior preparation, to mark targets, to a precise connection between intelligence, engineering, and ground maneuver, and to an effort to create a local shock effect in a zone where the enemy is used to thinking that it is hitting. In the Bint Jbeil sector, another detail came to light that, again, shows how Hezbollah builds its method of warfare. More than 130 weapons were found inside the school, AK-47 rifles, pistols, other equipment, flags, and also Hezbollah symbols. This was not some random storage room. It is the same pattern again, embedded combat capacity inside civilian space, using schools, homes, and civilian facilities as cover for military activity. From Israel's point of view, that also explains why the operation in southern Lebanon is continuing at this level of force. From Hezbollah's side, it points to distress. An organization that is confident in its defensive path does not need to bury weapons inside civilian institutions at this scale. The Israeli Air Force also continued to strike southern Lebanon heavily over the past 24 hours. More than 200 targets were hit, around 20 launchers, military structures, and terror cells. Some of the launchers were closed in rapid kill chains immediately after firing. That means that this is not only a wave of strikes against fixed, pre-planned targets, but also a very short cycle targeting, where detection, authorization, and attack happen with almost no breathing room for the enemy. This is exactly where we can see that the importance of what was described today from the Air Force as well, because inside the operational headquarters, raw targets and intelligence are turned into an ordered plan. And what matters is not only how to strike, but what enters the target bank, in what order, and at what time. In other words, this war is not being run only by pilots in the air or soldiers on the ground. It is being managed through an entire mechanism of prioritization, fire, and pursuit. And while all of this is happening, the fighting is also exacting a price from the IDF, because 5 IDF soldiers were wounded by rocket fire directed at our forces that are operating in the area. One of them was seriously wounded, 4 others were lightly wounded. All of them were evacuated to the hospital. Their families were notified, and that detail has to retain inside the story, because it's very easy to forget and to get used to strike counts. Forget that every clearing operation in terrain like this is carried out under fire, against cells of terrorists waiting for the chance to hit, and against an enemy that, even while retreating, is still trying to make Israel pay a price. IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir, who turned southern Lebanon, sharpened the direction. He said that Hezbollah has suffered more than 1,700 dead since the start of this campaign, that the forces are continuing the action in Bint Jbeil and clearing terror villages in the Bet Lif area, and that all the territory in southern Lebanon up to the Litani line must become a kill zone. That's a sharp and hard formulation, and it is not accidental. It defines a special objective, not only a target list. In other words, not just hitting one Hezbollah asset after another, but trying to change the meaning of the entire area, turning that belt into a place where Hezbollah can no longer return to its old routine of entrenchment. Prime Minister Netanyahu added his own military political layer when he declared that Israel would move to defeat Bint Jbeil and dismantle Hezbollah, while also expanding the security zone eastward towards the slopes of Mount Hermon. This is not only a message to the public in Israel, it is also a message to Lebanon, to the Americans, and to Iran. If there is going to be an agreement, Israel wants to arrive there from a clearly superior position. If there is no agreement, it's already marking out the area in which it wants to maintain operational grip. And that takes us to the diplomatic arena with Lebanon. Contacts between Israel and Lebanon are continuing, but here too, it is important to stay precise. There are talks, there is American pressure, there is IDF preparation for the possibility of a halt in fighting. There is a talk of conversation between Netanyahu and Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, but there is also no close agreement. Israel's demands are fairly clear: a buffer zone in southern Lebanon, full operational freedom, and an arrangement that prevents Hezbollah from returning to the area. And according to the line presented today, even if a ceasefire is declared, Israel is not intended to easily give up the ability to keep operating. And the player that is almost completely outside the picture right now is the one that once tried to insert itself into every such discussion: France. Both Jerusalem and Beirut pushed back on the French attempt to insert themselves into the negotiations, and for now, this arena remains overwhelmingly American. But Day 48 did not stop in Lebanon. It also opened at sea. The United States is continuing its naval blockade on the Iranian ports, and American forces are presenting an image of broad enforcement, with 15 ships, warships on alert, boarding capability, and the prevention of passage by at least 6 Iranian vessels that were forced to turn back. And based on the picture that formed over the last day, the Americans are trying to create an operational buffer that pushes the point of friction away from the Iranian coast itself and moves the interception and inspection effort into the Arabian Sea, where it is easier to operate and less exposed to Iranian missiles, to drones, and to fast boats of the Revolutionary Guards. But there too, the picture is more complex because, on one hand, the Americans speak of an effective blockade. On the other, maritime tracking firms are reporting that additional tankers managed to reach Iranian waters, including a vessel under the Iranian flag, and that ships around from Iraq sailed with AIS systems switched off in order to blur their route. In other words, the blockade is not a sealed wall. It is a zone of friction. The United States is applying pressure. Iran is trying to bypass it. And the global market is looking at every tanker as though it were a story of its own. And inside that tension, Mohsen Razai delivered one of the hardest threats that were heard so far from Tehran. He said that Iranian missiles can sink American ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and added that if the United States chooses a ground invasion, Iran will take thousands of hostages and demand $1 billion for each of them. That needs to be said plainly. This is not only a threat, it is also a window into the strategic mindset. Tehran understands it is struggling daily, badly, in the direct economic and military dimension. So, it is trying to deter by raising the price, not to win quickly, but to turn every American move into something expensive, painful and exhausting. And this is where one of today's most important lines begins: China. For which of the war, Beijing kept a relatively low profile. It condemned, spoke about stability, avoided confrontation, confronting Washington head on, and tried to stay behind the scenes. But the American naval blockade on Iran changed this equation because 90% of the Iranian oil is purchased by China. And when the Americans shut the valve on Iran, they're effectively pressuring Beijing as well. So China broke its silence. Its foreign ministry called the blockade dangerous and irresponsible. And Xi Jinping publicly spoke about the danger of a return to the law of the jungle. And the meaning of that goes beyond the diplomatic statement. China was not speaking only on behalf of Iran, it was speaking on behalf of its own interests. Since the beginning of March, more than 58 million barrels have left Karag Island, and most of that flowed to China. Iranian oil is not all of Chinese consumption, but it is an important component. And as the war drags on, China is beginning to feel the cost as well. Higher fuel prices, rising jet fuel costs, a roughly 10% increase in transportation costs, and even greater use of strategic petroleum reserves. This is no longer just a war between Israel, Iran, and the United States. It is a war that touches energy prices and the soft underbelly of the Chinese economy. And inside that comes the double tension with Trump. On one hand, he's pressing China to pressure Iran. On the other hand, he still wants a positive visit to Beijing next month and hopes to sign broader economic understandings there. He even said that Xi sent him a beautiful letter and committed not to send weapons to Iran. He later repeated that in his own post with the unforgettable line that Xi would give him a big fat hug when he arrives in China. It almost sounds comic, but behind that sentence lies a real contradiction. Trump wants to monitor what passes through Hormuz, including Chinese cargo, and at the same time preserve a positive atmosphere before his visit. Those two goals do not always go together. And there is another layer. Beyond pressure on China through oil, China itself has already begun to apply pressure in the other direction. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi spoke with Abbas Araghchi and called for preserving freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz while stressing 2 points at once: protecting Iran's sovereignty and its security, but also guaranteeing the safety and the freedom of international navigation. That's classic Chinese phrasing. Do not abandon Iran, but also do not let it hold the whole system hostage. And when China speaks this way, it's effectively signaling to Tehran that its strength as an ally is not a blank check. China is not the only player moving. Pakistan also continues to hold a key role in the talks. Pakistan's army chief, Asim Munir, again appears in the center of the picture, narrowing gaps, carrying messages, and sitting in the middle of one of the most active mediation tracks. But here too, we have to stay precise. There is still no date for the next round of talks. There is progress. There are contexts. There are exchanges of drafts. There is a sense that the sides are moving closer to a framework agreement, but there is still no closure. In the same breath, Trump continues to say that he does not intend to extend the ceasefire, that he prefers a deal, but has not finished the job, and that 2 amazing days still lie ahead. This is where it is important to pause on one major point. The pressure on Tehran is not only maritime, it is deeply economic. Before the blockade, Iran exported around 1.5 million barrels every single day and brought in about $140 million. Now, according to the American line, Iran is improvised and they have no money, and Washington sees that as a central engine pulling Tehran towards the table. Karag Island, through which around 90% of the Iranian oil passes, is now one of the most sensitive points in this entire system. The American concept is simple. You do not have to invade in order to paralyze. Sometimes it's enough to choke. And beyond Iran itself, the cost is already being measured across the region. The International Monetary Fund warned that the economies of the Middle East and North Africa are expected to slow significantly this year. Regional growth has been cut to only 1.1%. Iran's oil economy is expected to contract by 6.1%. Other Gulf states, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, and Qatar, may also slide into recession. Egypt and Saudi Arabia currently appear somewhat more resilient, but they are not immune. And that means that the struggle over Hormuz is no longer just a story about freedom of navigation, it is a question about structure of the entire regional economy. So much information, but we need your help to reach more people. How do you do that? Hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, let me know where you are coming from, where you're watching. Hit the like button and share this video with a friend. Make sure that you keep watching Boots on the Ground by turning on this little bell button next to the subscribe button. And if you want to see this war through our eyes, look for Yair Pinto and for Mati Shoshani on social media platforms. And in the middle of all of this, Iran is also trying to buy time. According to reports, Tehran is now signaling a certain degree of flexibility and raising the possibility of allowing ships to move through the Omani side of the Strait of Hormuz as part of broader understandings. This is not surrender. It is a tactical offer, an attempt to preserve the appearance of control while at the same time lowering the level of risk without looking like it has given up the strait. That's also why Oman is emerging today as one of the potential big winners of the maritime arrangement if it reached. If traffic returns through the Omani waters and reduces direct friction with Iran, Muscat once again becomes the space that enables breathing room, trade, and mediation. But Tehran is not only talking about arrangements, it is also trying to rebuild. And according to the reports, under cover of the diplomatic context, the regime is using Chinese rescue equipment and Russian engineers to restore the Imam Ali base and other strategic sites. If that's indeed the direction, then the meaning is clear. Iran is running on two clocks at once. One clock of negotiations, one clock of recovery. It is trying to avoid a renewed large-scale war right now, but also to prepare itself for the next round if and when it comes. And above that physical struggle, the battle of perception also continues. The IDF's Persian language spokesperson publicly raised the question of whether the spokesman of Iran's Qatam el-Anibah headquarters is even a real person or a character created through artificial intelligence. This is not just another media jab. It is an attempt to undermine credibility, to tell the Iranian public, if even the voice speaking to you on behalf of the regime may not be real, what does that story say about the entire message machine that you are hearing? You're using AI. And in a war like that, where fear, trust, and control matter almost as much as missiles, that's very, very real. Even in the secondary arenas, there is movement worth noting. In Kuwait, a covert financing network was uncovered that transferred money to Iran and to its proxies, including Hezbollah, under the cover of charity, religion, and trade. 24 operatives were arrested. 8 more figures were identified outside the country. That detail matters because it reminds us that the campaign against Iran is not only about ships, missiles, and negotiations. It is also about funding networks, deep pockets, and smuggling mechanisms that keep the Axis alive. Meanwhile, Gaza did not disappear from the picture either. The IDF announced the elimination of Ahmad Abu Hashra, a commander in Hamas's communications unit in the Gaza City area. Earlier, 2 central operatives in Hamas's production units were also eliminated, men who had been working to rebuild the organization's military capabilities even during the ceasefire. It's a small detail inside a very crowded day, but it is a reminder that the fronts are not truly separate. Israel continues dismantling, destroying Hezbollah capabilities in Lebanon, and against Iran also, and also in the Gaza Strip, without allowing Hamas to turn into a quiet opportunity to reconstruct and rebuild their terror infrastructure. And if we connect all the parts of this day, a very clear picture emerges. Israel is deepening the damage to Hezbollah on the ground, not only from the air, but also through precise raids and the physical dismantling of terrorist zones. The United States is strengthening the blockade, reinforcing the region with forces, and generating economic pressure aimed directly at the main artery of the regime in Tehran. Iran is threatening, rebuilding, signaling flexibility, but trying to maintain the image of a state that has not been broken. China is now entering the conversation more deeply, not out of love for stability, but because the price is beginning to reach its tooth. They're suffering as well economically. Lebanon is being dragged into a process in which the Americans, the United States, is trying to push a ceasefire, but Israel insists on coming to the table only after completing a few more moves on the ground. And the sea, as often happens in the Middle East, has suddenly gone from being an orderly trade corridor to becoming the arena in which the entire regional order is being tested in. What we're seeing right now is not the orderly end of a war, but a struggle over the terms on which that war will end. And the great question of day 48 is whether the pressure now tightening will produce a stable government or only give all sides a few more days to prepare for the next round. So, in the meanwhile, keep spreading the truth. Hit the subscribe button on TBN Israel so that you'll never miss another update of Boots on the Ground. You can also look for Yair Pinto, that's me, by the way, and Mati Shoshani on our social media platforms to get the behind-the-scenes look of what it's like to live in Israel. We'd love to have you here with us in person, but that's close enough for now. The best thing you can do is also pray. When you pray, pray for the safety of our soldiers, for wisdom to our leaders, for the children of Israel, especially those that are still under fire in the northern communities, and keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Shalom, Erev Tov, have a good evening, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.